I'd like to talk a little bit around MX1 and migration into Azure Cloud and support of Azure Cloud. As you know, the value propositions of the MX1 are a future-ready, SIP-enabled multimedia UC solution. But really, we're going to concentrate today on the flexibility of the MX1 in its deployment models, whether that be on-site, private cloud, or a hybrid of both, and really the benefits of how we could migrate to Azure and what we can support in Azure today. The propositions of the MX1 are to concentrate on the large enterprise with on-site focus as we've traditionally known, but we've adapted and embraced virtualization, VMware Hyper-V, and the next evolution of that is to look at private cloud models using the Azure model. It's very important that wherever a customer sits on their MX1 journey, from telephony switch forward to MX1 version 7, where we are today, there's a protection of that investment and there's a route forward via upgrade or replacement of hardware and migration to a virtualized environment. No customer can be left behind, and everyone has a route forward and an availability to take the latest level of software and the benefits and the features and functionalities that are attached to that. As part of virtualization and Mitel's model, it's very much to look at whether we look at public cloud delivery, whether we look at private cloud delivery, and where we sit in that. And the MX1 is very much part of that model and that strategy moving forward within Mitel. As you can see, you'll be aware of in your market space, from a public cloud offering, we have products such as Telepo, and the Mitel MX1 and its subscription-based model, or MLA as it's otherwise referred to, enables us to look at private cloud solutions against MX1 estates. There's business model differences between MLA and our traditional CapEx model. One of them being the fact that we work with UCC bundles. So we bundle together selections of applications to give us a entry, basic and standard UC bundle that sits within that environment. It's good to notice that when we look at Azure and when we look at cloud hosted solutions, we have that flexibility for either license model within the MX1. So customers could retain their traditional licensing model, or they could look at an OpEx model via the MLA option. And this ties in as if we're looking for Azure and we're looking at hosted services and reoccurring costs from an Azure environment, being able to layer the MX1 as a service over the top of that gives consistency in that consumption model. Within that, it's very much a partner-led profile that we use in the MX1. So Mitel's Azure support is really from a software and licenses perspective. We work with our partners to introduce the wraparound that the partner can offer with support, maintenance, third-party solutions, contracts and billings, and then also use a partner interface into the Azure program, whether that be your existing partner today or whether you look to take an Azure direct relationship or whether you work with an approved Azure reseller. The benefits of Azure really do tie into the benefits of MLA. So it really is around that scalability, that resource up and down, that flexibility to take your system from 1,000 users to 1,500 users and back down to 1,000 users. It's reduced cost of infrastructure for you as an organization. It's offboarding that server architecture. It's offboarding the requirement for servers and on-premise server farms. Easily accessible is one of the key benefits of Azure and Azure data centers, and also the flexibility in the storage model of Azure and the resilience model that sits within that, with many Azure data centers and the resilience that sits within them. And Azure also works very quickly. From a customer perspective, from a partner perspective, being able to run up a new instance of a new virtual machine within minutes is a key benefit of being able to use a hosted environment such as Azure. So what does the MX1 look like in Azure? Some key components of the MX1 that sit in the Azure environment, and that's our service node, our media servers or soft media servers that sit within the Azure environment, Cassandra database servers. From a management perspective, Service Node Manager and Provisioning Manager. From an applications, we can look at MyCC Enterprise in Azure and CMG and Inattend. And we're looking to introduce the MyCollab profile into Azure within the timeframes of Q2, Q3 this year. We have some rules around deployment in Azure, and they're fully documented in our CPI around the minimum requirements of connectivity. Generally, we look at MPLS connection or an Azure ExpressRoute. The MX1 itself is deployed via a virtual hard disk or virtual image. As we supported Microsoft Hyper-V for a number of years, it's very much based on that Hyper-V image, and it's a zipped image that's uploaded into Azure. And then once it's unzipped and deployed, it becomes an MX1 server. We have to be careful with MX1 in Azure for the resources group, virtual networks, subnets, dedicated hosts, etc. in Azure that are deployed and created by the Azure administrator, and also access to DNS and NTP and those network services that have to be available within the Azure environment. As I stated before, we look at an ExpressRoute into an Azure. That's the most secure and speed retention methodology that we can do. Within the Azure environment itself, there are multiple levels of firewall, not only on the server, but within the subnet that the MX1 environment will sit in. And obviously, we then look at dedicated services from your on-premise solution, whether that be SIP services, SIP connectivity locally with a local breakout and resilience using an EX gateway, or whether we look to put the SIP trunks into the Azure environment. So it really gives you a mix and match and a flexibility to deploy how you see fit. Using the private cloud architecture allows you as a customer or you as a partner to really take advantage of the availability and the scalability of Azure, but also be able to layer on top some of Mitel's public cloud offerings, such as the persistent chat in MyCollab, MyTeams meetings, performance analytics, and being able to consume them from an AWS environment, as well as having the security of Azure for your core MX1 and your core connectivity and services. We've deployed Azure now on a couple of customer sites as early adopters, one of them being a key long-standing multinational brewery. They moved to Azure from a business driver within their whole organization. So the customer in case has had a number of sites. We looked at the pan-European locations, and that was nine data centers in 9 different countries. And they wanted to move away from that distributed architecture to a centralized Azure managed cloud, and being able to move their UC and telephony services into that, including contact center. One of the great benefits of MX1 was we were able to embrace that and move forward with a new core MX1 based in Azure, but we're also be able to support legacy gateways on site. So we've got a mix of new EX gateways, classic gateways, and light media gateways on the customer's diverse locations on the site in different country units, all supported by centralized Azure with centralized media servers for SIP traffic. The actual cutover itself from on-premise to Azure was around 90 minutes. So there was 90 minutes downtime where the SIP extensions re-registered, MGUs, etc. were changed in the gateways to register them up to Azure. And this deployment is now live in one of the 9 countries and is planned to expand across that estate within Q2 and Q3 of 2021. When we look at our roadmap for the MX1, it's key to say that Azure virtualization, Dockers, Kubernetes, they're key to how we move forward, and they're key to our roadmap and continuation of that private cloud hosting services that we want to offer. We will continue to offer enhancements on in-application redundancy and security, and more adoption of our UC suite with the MyCollab and MyTeam MyCollab and MyTeam features and functionalities, but also as we look further along our roadmap, looking at our interactions of 1CX on next generation of UC applications. It's important to say that Mitel's ethos is to protect the investment you have made in the MX1 and protect and to move that forward in a pace and into an architecture that suits you, whether that be to adopt Azure or whether that be to retain pockets of on-site telephony and on-site resilience and availability. Layering over the top our next generation of applications, utilizing more newer technology in the fact of microservices and Kubernetes and Dockers. It's a key fact that when we sort of take away what the messages we want to take away, we have 3 key points within the MX1. That being flexible deployment, an offer of MX1 in the cloud or in Azure can be CapEx or OpEx, and indeed a hybrid model. This allows you as a customer to move at your own pace, to take the services you want to be cloud ready, but also retain pockets of resilience and redundancy on site and within your environment. It's around matching with your strategy. If you've got a move to cloud ethos, or if you're looking to stay at resilience and redundancy on site. And most importantly in the MX1 in Azure It's a single software stream. It's a standard build of MX1. It's the same MX1 that we put in Azure, that we have on premise, that we have in other virtualization platforms. And that's key moving forward, that we have single software stream and ready availability regardless of the environment that the MX1 is installed in.